gravity versus the vacuum of space. And that is my favorite of all time, which is most people don't get it because, unfortunately for us, it's a visual thing. A vacuum looks identical to our eyes as a normal room. You could take a room, suck out all the air, it's not going to look any different to you, right? So we have a hard time visualizing what a vacuum is. A vacuum is when you pull out all the oxygen and nitrogen. And by the way, what you're breathing in right now is just a soup. It's basically a thin version of water. You're breathing in 80% nitrogen right now and 20% oxygen. I know there's some trace gases. Just don't worry about that for the math right now. So the point is this: if you had a vacuum chamber above you right now, right, and you had a valve above you and you pop it, it's not like the movies, right? It's not this, oh, you only got 2 minutes of air left, grab the duct tape and your oxygen. No, you're dead instantly. Gravity has absolutely no, has no chance against a vacuum. It will lose every single time. You can look this up on YouTube all day long, right? So if that's the case, right? If the air in your room fires upstairs in a fraction of a second, you go outside, why is our air still here? Why is our atmosphere still here? And you say, what do you mean? It's like, well, our atmosphere is sitting next to the biggest vacuum chamber of all time.
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, time for the Freedomhub podcast webinar show. Great show for you. If you are new to the channel, let me show you our website, because you're going to want to go there after the show to see everybody that's coming up afterwards, and tune in every week to find us. Our website is your-mp.com. That stands for yourmarketplace.com. And you'll go over to the Your Media Hub tab, click there. And we do recommend you subscribe. You'll see our Wednesday show, Health, Biz, and Politics, and our Thursday show today. A little bit about our speakers and the topic. So you can tune in if you want or sign up, because we on the promos, you'll get an option to register. And you'll see who's coming up on the guests. Yesterday, we had a show on spontaneous human combustion, which you might want to go back and look at if you didn't see it. Fascinating. And down below are the social media, or the platforms that we post the videos on. BitChute, Brighteon, sometimes YouTube, not too much because we don't like them. They censor us, and many other people, of course. Okay, and I think that's it. So your-mp.com, let's stop that and turn it over to Charlie to introduce the topic and our guest.
Thank you so much, Jim. And in chat, I just put the promo for today. And if you didn't read it, you're seeing it now. The setup is our most viewed show from last year. And it's in your chat now. Click it, and then click this link to see what the most viewed shows were last year. And at the top of the list was Flat Earth Dave Weiss. Who presented his also top-rated Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac clock app that we've made it clickable, that image, so you can check it out. It's a lot of fun. Even if you don't believe in Flat Earth, it's a great way to learn the facts about our universe and think about some questions that'll make you a smarter person when it comes to who we are, where we are. But, this theory isn't going away. And the reason it isn't going away is because every time there's a debate between a baller and a flat earther, people wonder why the people defending the spinning space ball in a vacuum theory do so poorly. And for example of this, I put this in the promo, a debate on InfoWars, just happened last month between Austin Whitsitt and a host named Harrison. And really, if you want to share with me a debate where a Glober gets the best on a flat earther, I'd love to see it, because I haven't. So the authorities need to do a better job, or people who are skeptics and ask questions are going to keep asking questions and wanting to platform these kind of discussions. There's so much evidence that is weak on the side of the spinning space ball in a vacuum. This one right here is strong. If you do a what do you call it? The delayed lapse for camera, where all the lights kind of move into each other. Those are the stars rotating above the Earth, and they circle around the North Star that you can see through the Georgia Guidestones peephole. And you have been able to do this for 40 years, and the stars haven't moved from their positions if you go look at them every year. That would be impossible if the authorities are correct that we're moving in 4 different directions, spinning, orbiting, chasing the sun, moving sideways as a solar system, and moving to a different spot billions of miles away from the previous spot every year. You couldn't see the same star in that peephole at the Georgia Guidestones. And the evidence, there's so much more than that Mark will discuss. If you want to see more of Mark, I just saw him on Jim Brewer's show, the comedian from Saturday Night Live. I linked to that. I think Mark got his start asking like 21 questions or something for experts to answer about the Earth. And like me and like a lot of folks, their answers were weak, which kind of sent him on his own search. Like, why do we see farther than we should if the radius is that which the authorities say it is? So that is where we are. And Mark, give us your latest on the state of flat Earth,
Sure.
why it's important, and then we'll go to Q&A for the balance of the hour.
All right. My name is Mark Sargent, just so you guys know, Sargent. I am a flat Earth recruiter, and I've been doing this now I'm one of the older ones. I've been doing this now for the last 9 years. And let's explain this for the people that are out there in the audience that are new to this. What do I mean when I talk about flat Earth? Meaning you are not living on a tiny little rock that's covered by a little bit of water and a little bit of gas that's flying through an impossible universe at incredible and amazing speeds that are so incomprehensible to you that you just kind of wave it off as like, well, people in the lab coats are smarter than me, so what do I know, right? And by that, let's go into something really quick. The average person, what you're talking about, the debates, why the debates go so badly for Globers. And what's amazing for us, and we've only kind of been looking at this for the last few years, which is how few people even know their own model that they're defending. And so I'm not trying to insult the audience anyway. So if I say, how fast is the Earth traveling, or how fast is it spinning on its axis? It's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, supposedly at the equator. It's supposedly going around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour. The solar system is supposedly moving sideways through the galaxy like a dinner plate at 500,000 miles an hour, and our galaxy is flying through the universe at millions of miles an hour. And most of the people in the world, the general public, especially the people that are outside of our community, don't know any of this, and yet they defend it. Right? You're defending what, and we go, it's like, okay, why are you defending the globe when you are sorry, brain freeze for a second. Why are you defending the globe when you don't even know your own model? In fact, let me get back to the beginning of where I started. I got into this back in 2014 when I never got married or had kids, and so I had a lot of free time on my hands. And I looked into it just about I'm older, so I got into the internet when it was new and went down just about every rabbit hole you could go into. To where at one point, I'm pretty sure I finished the internet when it came to rabbit holes. And I still wouldn't look into flat Earth. Flat Earth is stupid. It's ridiculous. Why would anyone ever look into it? And so one weekend I was like, I got nothing better to do. Why not? Let's look into flat Earth, right? What could go wrong? And I should be able to knock this thing out in a weekend. I've got an opinion on just about every conspiracy that's out there. But flat Earth is like, okay, let's see what I can do. That weekend turned into months, which turned into 9 months. And the beginning of 2015, I ran out of ideas. I literally panicked in the middle of the night. 3:30 in the morning, February 10th. 2015, woke up and it's like I had that Jerry Maguire moment I will throw some media references out at you every once in a while, and said, okay, where am I gonna? I'm gonna go the other way. Forget about I can't prove the globe in a court of law anymore. So I'm gonna go the other way. I'm going to make a series of videos. Well, I didn't know at the time. I was like, I'm gonna make one video. And I got up right then and there. I had the narrative in my head. I've never had such clear writing in my life. And I just wrote everything down. I wrote the very first clue, which turned into the Flat Earth Clues introduction. And I said, okay, well, I've written it down. I might as well narrate it and might as well attach slides to it. And it took me all day I knew nothing about video editing, put it up there. And it was more or less a cry for help. It's like, somebody help me. The internet hive mind, help me out. I can't prove it, but the internet hive mind doesn't miss anything. If you think I'm kidding, look up stuff like moviemistakes.com. If somebody in a movie moves a coffee cup from one side of the room to the other, and there's a consistency issue or continuity issue, they're going to catch it, right? And immediately I started getting, I thought some academic, I was hoping some academic with a PhD was going to call me up and say, okay, here's where you went wrong. You forgot to carry the 2. You can shut down your YouTube channel now. That's not what happened. Everybody started contacting me. It was subject matter experts, military people from just about every background except for aerospace contacted me and said, yeah, it's not nuts. Here's why. And for the first 6 months, while I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for somebody to just knock Flat Earth down, it didn't. It just kept getting reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And the next thing you know, I was like, oh my God, I'm all in. Let's go into some of the reasons why. And I know I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I should probably check the chat room every once in a while. I will try to check that every once in a while. Someone came up to me, a German television team came to me and they said, okay, we've got an astrophysicist in Georgetown. We'd like you to debate. And it's like, okay, but we're just going to pass notes between you and basically videos between you two, because if you know anything about academics, and I'm sorry, unfortunately for academics, when you get a master's degree or higher in a physical science, your wheelhouse becomes so small that they're not really comfortable talking about certain topics, and they're very, very dry on camera, which is why we only have 3 media scientists that are out there. Neil deGrasse Tyson from America, Brian Cox from the UK, and Michio Kaku from Japan. And don't even think about throwing in Bill Nye there. Oh, I could spend a day on Bill Nye and everything that's wrong with that guy. So they said, come up with 5 questions, science questions that are points that you could throw at a scientist, in this case, an astrophysicist from Georgetown, to drive home your flat Earth point. And I go, okay, I'll come up with something. 5 real quick. We'll rattle them off. First one would be long distance photography, which is, if you look off in the distance, the Earth's curvature, supposedly, and again, this is not our math, this is their math, is 8 inches per mile squared, right? Which means it gets worse over time. So 10 miles, I'll work out the math for you. You don't have to worry about forgetting algebra, which most people do after they're done with it. Well, say 10 miles, that would be 10 times 10, which is 100, times 8 inches, which is 800 inches, right? That's 10 miles. And at 50 miles, it just keeps getting worse and worse, to where at 50 miles, it's almost 1,700 feet, right? We can see objects incredibly far on the other side of the hill. And you want to claim looming and refraction and all that. Okay, fine. But we've got lots of experiments out there, including the wonderful black swan experiment off of the coast of California, where not only can you see the oil rigs completely at 6 miles and 10 miles, but you could see the horizon behind it, behind both of those things. And I've told people, I go explain this, and they have the gears start grinding. And I've actually had a scientist come at me. It's like, well, okay, well, yes, you can see all the oil rigs and you can see the horizon. The actual horizon isn't in front or behind it. It's invisible. I go, yeah, good luck getting that to resonate with the population. Anyway, so long distance photography, number 1. Number 2, well, that's usually what gets most people into flat Earth, by the way, is long distance photography. In my clues, and anyone can review them anytime you want. You can go to Flat Earth Clues. It's out there on the internet. At no point do I tell people to go to a beach or a body of water and shoot long distance photography, but all these people instinctively did. They went to oceans and lakes and everything. And they shot lighthouses and they shot mountains and they shot ships and oil rigs and everything off in the distance. And in fact, I asked them while they were coming to me, people were sending me loads and loads of images. I said, why are you shooting long distance? And they go, because water is absolutely flat. It lays perfectly flat. It's like, oh, wow. I never thought of that. They go, yeah, it's absolutely tabletop flat. Wonderful. The second one, which is gravity versus the vacuum of space. And that is my favorite of all time, which is Most people don't get it because, unfortunately for us, it's a visual thing. A vacuum looks identical to our eyes as a normal room. You could take a room, suck out all the air, it's not going to look any different to you, right? So we have a hard time visualizing what a vacuum is. A vacuum is when you pull out all the oxygen and nitrogen. And by the way, what you're breathing in right now is just a soup. It's basically a thin version of water. You're breathing in 80% nitrogen right now and 20% oxygen. I know there's some trace gases. Just don't worry about that for the math right now. So the point is this: if you had a vacuum chamber above you right now, right, and you had a valve above you and you pop it, it's not like the movies, right? It's not this, oh, you only got 2 minutes of air left, grab the duct tape and your oxygen. No, you're dead instantly. Anyone that deals with deep sea diving or pressurized systems like deep sea oil rigs or submarines, they'll tell you it is not like the movies. It is absolutely instantaneous. It's violent. The air in your room will equalize in a fraction of a second upstairs. Absolutely equalize. Gravity has absolutely has no chance against a vacuum. It will lose every single time. You can look this up on YouTube all day long, right? So if that's the case, right? If the air in your room fires upstairs in a fraction of a second, you go outside, why is our air still here? Why is our atmosphere still here? And you say, what do you mean? It's like, well, our atmosphere is sitting next to the biggest vacuum chamber of all time. It's massive. It is billions, supposedly, right? It's billions of times bigger than the Earth, trillions of times. And yet our atmosphere stays here. And the only excuse, everyone's knee-jerk response is going to be, well, because of gravity. I go, okay, so the same gravity that couldn't keep the air in your room from going upstairs. The exact same gravity right over there. That same gravity is holding down everything. No, not a chance. That's my favorite, but that's number two. Number three would be the eclipse shadow, which is a pretty easy one. We've had eclipses recently. In fact, the big one that went across the United States this year, which was, okay, if the moon is 2,000 miles wide, why is the blackout zone usually, I was at the one in 2017, that one was only 70 miles wide. And the one this year was only, 100 miles wide, 110 mimiles wide, which is also weird that there'd be such a disparaging difference. Why does the shadow get so tiny, right? Why is there 97, 98% decrease of the shadow size? Why is the blackout zone so small? You never see that in real life. You never walk by anything in the sunlight and your shadow while you're walking turns down to the size of an action figure. You couldn't do it if you wanted to. And yet that's what happens. What's interesting about that is, okay, so why isn't there a 2,000 mile? When airplanes fly over, by the way, that's actual size. Shadows are only actual size or longer, right? Actual size or they stretch. Airplanes never turn down a really small thing. The bigger question is, why is the shadow size pretty much approximately what we say the sun size is or the moon size is, right? If we say the moon and the sun are roughly, I don't know, 50 miles or less wide, give or take, doesn't that make more sense? Fourth one is the moon temperature, which I love. That was one that was brought up to me. I did not come up with it, but I did come up with a certain aspect of it. Somebody called into it. I'd already been in flat Earth for a year, and somebody came up with the moon temperature, which was he called into a podcast I was doing, and they say, oh, by the way, Mark, the moon's cold. It's generating. I go, what are you talking about? I go, it's colder at night. We know that. Duh, right? I'm waving him off, right? I'm into flat Earth. I'm waving this guy off. And he goes, no, man, check it out. He goes, the moon temperature is cold. I go, okay. So the late Rob Skiba was one of the early guys to do experiments on this. And by that, what I mean is, we'll do Fahrenheit. I apologize for anybody who's listening in Celsius. I'm American. If it's 90 degrees in the sun, it's 80 degrees in the shade, right? It's always cooler in the shade. Not the case. In the moonlight, it's warmer in the moonlight than it is in the, it's warmer in the shade than it is in the moonlight. So if it's 50 degrees in the moonlight, a full moon, it's up to 60 degrees or more in the moon shade. And it's like, what does that mean? What that means is, and you can check this. I could probably drag it out of the drawer, but it's like point and click $20 infrared thermometers, which is used for engine blocks and concrete. You can test this yourself. And gets even weirder is if you take a magnifying glass to sunlight, right? You can burn things, right? Like burn paper with a magnifying glass. You do the same thing to moonlight, it gets even colder. Scientists will not touch this with a 10 freaking foot pole. And so it's like, okay, does that prove that the Earth is flat? I go, no, it doesn't. But it absolutely destroys the relationship between the sun and the moon. Because remember, the moon is only lit up because the sunlight is supposedly reflecting off the moon, right? Well, if that's the case, it should never. I mean, you might be able to get neutral at best, but it's never going to get colder. That'd be like me shining a light off that wall and chilling lettuce off the reflection. How's that going to happen? With what light source? Well, we can do it now. This is not new technology for us. This is you look up cold laser light online. We use it in health and beauty products all day long. The bigger question is, why is the moon generating a cold laser light? Last one, number 5. Hopefully then we'll hopefully go to Q&A. I'll do what I can. Number 5 is the oh crap, just lost it. 1 second. Number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Crap. I've got brain lock. Number 5 is Van Allen radiation belts. Okay. Sorry, it's been a while. Van Allen radiation belts, are the Van Allen radiation belts deadly? Yes or no? It's a simple question. And it's a trap question. I throw this at people all the time. I go, okay, are they deadly? Yeah, yes or no? And I say, okay. So you immediately say by the way, if you don't know what the Van Allen radiation belts are, they were announced by Van Allen, a NASA scientist back in the day, back before the space program. He was the guy that said, oh, by the way, there's these really thick donut bands of radiation around the Earth, super, super deadly. No one should ever go up there, right? Because you'll die. And then immediately Kennedy comes out almost right away and says, oh, we choose to go to the moon, this decade, and do the other thing. It's like, what are you talking about? So they had to go back to Van Allen. It's like, dude, how are you getting past these? Kennedy already said we're going to have a space program. And he goes, oh, we're just going to go really, really fast. And he's like, okay, sure. But he said they were like 60,000 miles thick, and your best speed is like, what, 18,000 miles an hour, which means hours in each direction. And by the way, this is where it gets weird, right? So the only things that can stop radiation, right, are lead, right, which are used in all sorts of things, gold, which is twice as dense as lead. Most people don't know that, and a whole bunch of water, which we use in power plants. All of these things cannot be used in aircraft, right? You don't use heavy weight you definitely don't put them at the top of a rocket. It's like putting an anchor at the top of a rocket. You never ever do that, right? So the shielding that they used in the capsules was aluminum and plastic. So how did the astronauts make multiple round trips to the moon and back, the Apollo astronauts, with almost no shielding at all? And nobody died. Nobody got radiation poisoning. Nobody even got cancer. I think there's still, even today in 2024, I think there's like 4 of these guys still walking around, the original astronauts. There may be 3. I have to look it up to be sure. But the point is, nobody died mysteriously from any sort of illness. So then you say, okay, well, maybe they're not deadly. Well, you can go to nasa.gov anytime you want, look up this wonderful little video called Orion Trial by Fire. And that is, in fact, it won a local Emmy, I think, in Texas, because their space centers in Houston, which I visited at one point. And they said, oh, yeah, by the way, we're not going to test the Orion capsules. And by the way, the Orion is the Mars project, which is a whole nother joke in itself. We can't test the Orion capsules with human test subjects because we haven't solved the radiation problem. It's like, what are you talking about? You solved the radiation problem perfectly. You solved it in the 60s. There was no problem at all. In fact, it was flawless. We haven't even had an accident in a spacesuit where somebody died, which is a whole nother thing. So between those 5 questions, sorry, I know we're getting back to the original thing, which is, okay, those 5 questions, they videotaped me saying pretty much the same thing what I just told you guys, fired them off to the guy from Georgetown. He just folded like a card table. It was over. And that was it. And to be fair, I knew he wasn't going to respond because it wasn't in his wheelhouse. Academics get so gun shy when they get up to a certain level, especially PhDs. They're like, I'm not comfortable answering this question, therefore I'm not going to answer any of his questions, therefore I'm out of it. Which to your point, Charles, was yeah, we have a really tough time getting people to debate us. Neil deGrasse Tyson had a chance on Joe Rogan he was offered a chance to debate one of our guys, Eric Dubé from Thailand, and he backed out. Now, truth is, Neil Tyson doesn't debate anybody, but scientists, for the most part, have a really, really tough time because they think it's beneath them. You get to that certain education level, you get that arrogance. Neil Tyson said this line that is one of the most arrogant things I've ever heard since Kanye, where he says, science is right whether or not you believe in it. Right. It's like when we put our stamp of science on it, that's it. That's the gospel. That's what's the truth. But that's not true at all. Science is only right until they're wrong. and then they never apologize for it. It's always science that that wins in the day. They just put it under the license of science, and if it's repeatable, sorry, I know that Mr. Oblate's Spheroid, absolutely right. Yeah, he was the guy that said, sorry, I was looking at the chat. Yeah, he was the guy that, yeah, he went on stage and said, oh, it's an oblate spheroid, it's pear-shaped. And then we come back and go, then why is every NASA picture absolutely pixel perfect sphere? There's no bulge in it at all. It's absolutely spherical according to their pictures. And then he comes back, he goes, well, I was only saying that, but it wasn't, but it's like a pool ball. But it's actually, it's like, oh, dude, you can look up oblate spheroid all day long, and it shows the same thing. It shows a squished, slightly squished basketball. That is never, ever what we see. They contradict themselves all the time. NASA is a joke. The Apollo program and everything about the space program, every space program, by the way, SpaceX, Blue Horizon, Virgin Galactic, all that stuff are absolutely joke. They're absolutely run by the same operations. You know, where do you think they get their engineers? They get everything from NASA. Elon Musk is a NASA puppet. He's an American government puppet, by the way. And if you have any doubt of that, there was a story that came out this morning. I know I've gone from the weeds, but I swear I'm going to cut myself off here in a second. Where Elon Musk, Trump says if he wins, Elon will be a White House advisor. It's like, oh, good Lord. Seriously? I mean, if that doesn't prove to you that he is just run by the system, whatever. And yet, and hell, my own brother-in-law thinks Elon is the smartest man that ever lived. They keep pushing him to be this real-life Tony Stark, and he's not. The space program is a joke. Sorry, last thing, because I want to circle back, which is just to be clear, you are living in a building. You are living in a soundstage, a terrarium, a planetarium. It was not built by us. We had nothing to do with the building of it. We don't have the engineering skills. It was built by someone way older, way more powerful. I know it's probably a follow-up question that you have. Way more powerful than ourselves. All we did, in fact, even our best and brightest didn't figure it out till almost 1960 because we just didn't have the tech to even to figure out exactly what we were in. And then when we figured it out, all we were doing was keeping the secret. That's why I think it's the most wonderful secret ever, because it's not a man-made secret. All the other man-made secrets you want, they can be buried in the desert somewhere. They could be hidden in a base. This is one, it's the world that you live in, which is why it's the most wonderful version of red pill, blue pill. There you go. That's my opening rant at 9 in the morning.
Thank you, Seattle, or near there.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Before I'll start off with a couple of things. I'm not sure I'd say rebuttal, but okay, academics, absolutely gun shy. And a lot of them we know are, they don't want to put themselves out there.
No.
And then the other thing is some of them probably aren't good debaters. You would slam them just because they're not on camera much. And then they wouldn't like, where do I go? Now, next thing, then you can respond if you want.
Okay.
NASA is, we know it's full of shit. I mean, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all know that. Yeah. I just saw it yesterday. There was a guy speaking in Florida in the county that Cape Kennedy is in, talking and showing evidence of that all the Challenger people are still alive. The Challenger explosion, right?
Yep.
So he's saying, we're getting scammed. Look at all the tax dollars going to NASA. That's enough. We're done. Yep. So, I mean, you're right. Absolutely.
And by the way, let me jump in on that one real quick because I'll forget. Yeah. One of those astronauts, I was sent that video just this morning, by the way, where the guy came out there. What we're talking about, the astronauts that supposedly died in the explosion in 1986. I think it was a freshman in college back then.
Yeah.
We went to one of those guys' houses, right? And he was shoveling his driveway in the snow. And the reason I absolutely called BS on that guy was if you watch enough cop shows and you watch enough real life documentaries, what he did not do was he did not give an official alibi, right? He was just talking about, oh, I know I've been accused of looking like that guy my whole life. And oh, he seemed like a pretty guy. It's like, really? Because I've never heard of anyone being accused of looking exactly like another guy for his entire life. But that's not where he screwed up. Where he screwed up was he didn't give an alibi, meaning he should have said immediately, again, this is what all cops, law enforcement will tell you. Oh, no, in 1986, I was doing blah, blah, blah over in blah, blah, blah. It's not, I was like, that's what he should have answered with. He never, ever even addressed it. never even touched it. And it's like, there's your screw up right there. It's like, in fact, he should have said, oh, in 1986, I happened to
Yeah.
be watching it on television in a bar, in blah, it's like, no.
And I have proof. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but no, he absolutely did not.
So I think my point here is that it's kind of your point, but going to the Van Allen radiation belt,
Right.
I don't believe that either. I mean, there's nothing they say that particularly to me would even make sense. So whether there's radiation or not radiation, who knows?
Yeah. And
In other
and now
yeah.
announcing the Van Allen radiation belt was a brilliant move. When I looked at this thing, when I looked at the world as like a structure, I tried to break it down, which was I used to teach proprietary software for a living. And I was breaking down, it's like, okay, what would I do if I was trying to, if I figured this thing out in 1960, what around then, what would I do to hide it? And announcing you got to remember what happened. They announced the Van Allen radiation belts and they created the Antarctic Treaty in the same year. They locked down the outer rim and they militarized the ceiling. They basically said, oh, hey, nobody should ever go up there. Super, super deadly. Now they knew eventually, tech was going to catch up and it was only going to slow people down, but it slowed people down really, really well. And again, only the military went to space. And by the time the private companies got online, which took a long time after kicking the can, it really worked out for them.
So yeah, I've been in that space black projects world for a long time. So
yeah.
The reason to me that NASA and everyone else is saying, oh, we can't go up there, et cetera, is that first of all, there's other beings, there's other civilizations on the moon or representatives there.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah. And then, so that goes to your point also. That's why they don't want us to go. And also they have bases in Antarctica, which is to me and the German Third Reich, Fourth Reich, whatever. Now it's the Fourth Reich, or
right,
also based out of, they call it the Dark Fleet in Antarctica.
Yep.
But the moon and the temperature, I don't know. But since the moon is a satellite, I mean, it's not a real planet,
right? And
there's plenty of evidence. So I'm not sure that temperature thing. There might be factors there that we don't know. That's all I'm.
Oh yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, in fact, it's so unique, so recent that there's been no scientific paper on it. I don't know if there's ever going to be because it's tricky. If you're a scientist, you're a PhD, or you're working on your thesis. How do you even build a thesis around this? Because the thesis itself contradicts other things about our world.
Yeah. Well, so, again, we learn something new all the time. And the last point but then we'll go to Charlie, is on atmosphere and gravity. You make a good point, except that now gravity doesn't really seem to exist. It's an electrical force that the physicists are finding. So that changes how we look at that in the air and the vacuum. Right. And I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just that I don't think that can prove we're correct because the laws of science are changing. And to me, just to end, I don't think the Earth is necessarily a round ball. In fact, I'd probably put it more as a torus shape with a hole through the middle, which is another whole area. But I just want to throw that out. So I'm not on the flat side, but there's too many things there that just,
I got you. But let me throw the thing before we go to Charles. The gravity thing, I want to clarify, which is science will tell you. You can ask any scientist you want. Neil Tyson, God bless him, he has helped us more than he hurt us. Where he said, we can't tell you what gravity is. We can only tell you what it does. We can only tell you the symptoms of gravity. We can't replicate it. If you could replicate it, then you could absolutely tell me what gravity is. And for me, it's a push. Gravity is now I'm just going to say it's a weak force. It is a magical molecular force that pulls things to the center of a ball. That's what science says. I say, oh, it's a magical molecular force that kind of pulls things down towards a disk. Do I think the density, and I'm sure when you were talking to David Weiss, density came into it. Do I think the density has something to do with it? Yeah, sure, you bet. Meaning if you hold a pressurized ball underneath the water and it pops back up to the surface, was it gravity that popped that ball to the surface, or was it density? You guys have all seen the layers and layers and layers of liquids of things. Density, I think, has some. I think it's a combination. Do I think that some sort of electromagnetic force exists out there? Sure, but it's definitely not what science defines it at. There you
No,
go.
but the future science, which hopefully they'll release to us certainly soon, we're hope so. We have two types of anti-gravity that the military is using secretly. One
Sure.
of them is electrogravitic,
Yep.
and the other is using, I believe, some sort of uh, what's it called? Isotope, a
Right.
radioactive isotope of an element that supposedly doesn't exist. And I have family in Army intelligence spy areas that have confirmed this to me.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh,
too
I
many
believe
things
I
there.
believe in the
Yeah,
unified field theory engine. I call them UF engines, the UFO engines, basically. If you had a unified field that could balance the gravitational waves, if we want to call it that, and electromagnetic waves, then yeah, the part some of the physics go out the window because then you could have a craft that basically travels any direction you want at just about any speed you want, any
yeah.
acceleration rate you want. And oh, by the way, you can never release that to the public, not now in our civilization, because it would wipe out industry as we know it. It'd be too. Think of all the different
Well,
things it would replace.
yeah, there's a lot of reasons, like as you were insinuating, I think that whoever's pulling the strings and built this construct, and
Yeah,
everything is energy, so it's an energetic construct, kind of like the Matrix, I suppose.
yeah,
Um, that's where we need to go. Let me stop, go to
yep, yep.
Charles,
Sorry,
and talk,
sorry.
and no, we're good. Charlie,
Thanks, Jim. Mark, so wonderful to have you on Freedom Hub. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So back to 1960,
Yeah,
you kind of put that whole topic a little differently than some of the other flat Earth public figures.
right.
That's a real interesting timeline. Let's kind of delve into that a bit because shortly after that discovery of this terrarium in which we're living in
Yeah,
1960, we lost access to the edge of our world pond in the Antarctic ring
right,
around us.
right.
And for a lot of folks, whether they believe that or not, the idea that there's a treaty that's been going on since the 60s and is questioned by nobody, and there's no independent research allowed,
Yeah.
where are they hiding?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, yeah, let me back up just for a second, which is the Antarctic Treaty, which was initially ratified in 1959, which says that no corporation can set up shop in Antarctica from any country forever. It's which is by the way, if you know anything about treaties, and in fact, it's not even up for review until 2041. Now it's like, well, it's 2024 now. It's not that far away. It's like, yeah, but in 1960, that was a long time ago, right? And no treaty, every treaty that's ever been made has been broken. It is the only unbroken treaty. And think about the countries out there, by the way, before I answer the question, because this gets tied into it. Think about the countries and the corporations that have gobs and gobs of liquid cash, especially in the United States, for example. If you want to start in the United States, if you want to start fracking in that guy's backyard net tomorrow, right? You can make it happen, right? We've seen it, many, many times. It's like you just throw money at the problem and you can make it happen. And yet these same corporations with huge amounts of liquid cash cannot go down to Antarctica. In fact, that was one of my turning points, which was that tipped the scales for me, which is not only are they not allowed to go down there, they're not even allowed to talk about it. They're not even allowed to protest. I mean, come on, British Petroleum should have been running full page ads in the London Times for years saying how great it would be for us to go down to Antarctica. I mean, Richard Byrd, when he came back, said the whole place is made out of money and resources. There's no plant life to run over. There's no animal life. There's no indigenous populations. We could just, he was worried that there were going to be wars started in Antarctica over resources. And yet these corporations can't go down there. And well, what are they hiding? Think about it this way. It's not what I mean, they are hiding something, but it's the possibility of disclosure that they're hiding. So if you have a massive oil corporation, you're going to have planes, and you're going to have your own helicopters. Think about this. This is one of the shortest Illuminati meetings of all time. And I'm just using Illuminati just to throw a name out there. If you want to call them the authority, that's fine. But they say, okay, should we let corporations, there's a lot of money to be had down there. Maybe we should have limited access. And then somebody says, no. Plane goes off course. We're going to have to tie up that loose end. Helicopter goes off course. Eventually, we're going to have to tie up a loose end. Somebody gets lost. We're going to have to figure that out. And so somebody makes the decision. It's like, no, we have to lock this thing down. For me, what they're hiding is the outer edge, or at least the indicators of the outer edge. There could be, could there be some signs of an ancient civilization down there? Sure, you bet. The proof of that, would have been Operation High Jump. which was, after once the surrender papers were signed in Tokyo in Japan after World War II, when that thing was wrapped up, Admiral Byrd, you thought he would have been retiring, right? No, full-blown carrier fleet down to Antarctica to solve a problem that they didn't want to talk about. Oh, for research purposes, is really a full-blown carrier group with 5,000 infantry? Really? And yet, and we knew why, and that was because the only country that was down there, and you can look this up, this is not some speculation, the only country that was down there during World War II was Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany loved the fact that Nazi Germany was all in for the war, which means there was no stone unturned. If Frodo's ring was out there somewhere, they were going to look for it. Harry Potter's wand, oh, you bet. Ark of the Covenant, Raiders of the Lost Ark, not just a movie. They absolutely were going after everything they could. If they knew there was something that could win them the war in Antarctica involving an ancient civilization, they were going to be there. And so, yeah, locking down Antarctica was a smart move on their part. The Antarctic Treaty, and find me a country that's protested it, to your point. By the way, no country is gonna. It's like we need the resources. I mean, after World War II, when the smoldering ruins of Europe and Russia, especially the UK, they needed to rebuild, and yet the resources were off limits. Wow, pretty amazing to me. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
speaking of folks going on off course, is it true GPS and compasses do not work down there?
Yes, you can look this up all day long. Compass, in fact, I love it because it's not even our people. Kids sometimes, they'll do live things, where classrooms ask people in Antarctica questions, and they ask them every once in a while. It's like, hey, what does a compass do? Right? It's like compasses don't do anything because there is no that was one of the first things we found out, which was there is no magnetic South Pole. We got to remember, and people forget science, which is supposedly on a globe, there's North and South Pole, bar magnet, right? North and South Pole, which means when you get south of the equator on a globe, the compass should start dominating south, and it doesn't, right? In fact, I had an Australian military contact me almost immediately, said, dude, there is no magnetic south. It's absolutely a joke. That little silver pole they put in the snow, that's not magnetic south. It's just something with the flags around it, just something they bring the tourists to. The compass don't do anything. The compass needle should just absolutely be riveting, burying south. And in fact, there's been some wonderful videos out there that showed recently, and we didn't even come up with this until I think in the last couple of years, that said if there's magnetic north, which makes everything work great, right? Only if there's magnetic north. You add a second magnet anywhere on that outer rim, the compass doesn't work. The compass becomes almost useless. So magnetic north, that's the only thing that's out there. Magnetic south doesn't exist. I'd love a troll to come back and show me magnetic south. There you go.
I'm going to, who do we have next, Sharon? Just to touch on that real quickly. The Germans, to finish up on that, the Germans built a base starting in the 30s, right, down underground in Antarctica.
Sure.
And at the end of the war, when they were losing, they took a couple of thousand Germans, breeding stock, top officers, over 100 U-boats, and they went and they moved down to their base in Antarctica, which is where they've been since. So and they worked with and one of the alien races, I think, I'm not sure, from Draco or one of them, but or two. That's how they got their flying discs, anti-gravity, and so on, which is just like you said, we know that exists. Yeah. So to counter that point, I'm just going to say we know there is a German presence down there. We know that there's an ET presence down there. My understanding from remote viewers, et cetera, is there are a lot of ET bases down there, and they don't. We've kind of given that. That was the purpose of the treaty, to give it to them. Still could be the edge of the world, I'm not saying, but that was a big part of it. And there seems to be plenty of evidence of that. And when you've got that kind of technology down there, as far as the South Pole or magnetic things, again, who knows what's going on? I just think our normal science, South Pole, when you've got these advanced tech and civilizations down there, they could be changing it for their own purposes, so we can't find them. I don't know.
And I'll go with you on that. I generally I try to refrain from going that far, but in your case, no, I'm right there with you.
I'm on the outer edge.
Yeah,
Also.
well, it's a live and let live policy. I've heard that many times, which was once the Germans got down there. Same reason why the Germans really haven't come back and done the whole Iron Sky movie scenario where they just start rolling in and do stuff. Where the alien technology down there, or the other groups, it's like, yeah, you can hang up with us, we'll give you asylum, and but you can't. It's like a junior high dance. You can't go back into the gym, right? Once you leave, you can't get drunk in the parking lot and then come in and raise hell. So you're with us, but that's it. You're not going to be
Yeah.
taking over the world anymore.
Okay, Sharon, you're up.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I've been kind of dancing around this topic for a long time, and I'm not a mathematician or a physicist or an astrophysicist, and I would guess most people on this talk are not. So my first question, I have a few questions since there's only one other hand, because Charles asked me to ask a few questions.
Okay.
Who or what agency or what group started the globe theory to fool everybody, and when do you think this originated? Because I think originally in the Bible they were saying, or biblical people, Christians, thought the world was flat.
Well, and they did, and there's a wonderful website. Thank you for introducing that, by the way. I generally don't ask beforehand if we are allowed to bring up biblical stuff, but there was again the late Rob Ski, but there's a wonderful website out there called testingtheglobe.com, and he was one of the first guys to look through the entire Bible and say, he came back to me and goes, it's a flat Earth book. He goes from Joshua to Genesis. He goes, there's only one verse in the entire book that even hints at a globe, and that is Isaiah 40:22. He who sitteth upon the circle of the earth. He goes, but in Hebrew, he goes, circle is not the same word as ball or globe or sphere, which makes sense because if the devil was showing Christ, up at this ridiculous high level, the circle of the earth, the disc of the earth, well, that would sort of make sense. But as far as the deception itself, I think it came. Because remember, going all the way back to Copernicus back in the day. 500 years ago, most of the population couldn't read or write. So all you had to come up with an icon. So the globe was a wonderful icon because, oh yeah, here is the world. We don't care if you know how to even write your own name. That's the world. And that became great conditioning, but it was slowly over time. Now, do I think the devil had something to do with it? Or, I mean, as far as groups go, wasn't any agency, modern agency that we know. If people say, who's high at the highest pecking order, that's a tough one because there's so many different groups out there. I'm going to go with the oldest, which is the Vatican, the remnants of the whole, the Roman Empire. They've been there for probably the longest. So do I think they had something to do with it? Probably, but that's part of the mystery, isn't it? The first rule of power is stay hidden. Napoleon said it best is when he said, you can't be overthrown if they don't know who you are. So I thought that was brilliant. But sorry, one more thing to your point. That icon became so central to the conditioning, which was it doesn't matter how far you get through the education system. They put the globe in your classroom, at least in the United States. They'll put it over. It's like, and that's the only thing we debunk to children, by the way. We don't talk about JFK or 9/11 or Sandy Hook or any of that stuff to kids, but we do in very first. It's, oh yeah, well, we used to think the earth was flat, but here's what it is now. And take that little spinning toy, put it in the classroom, and you sit there bare minimum, if you finish high school, 12 years of that sitting in your classroom. That is grade A #1 conditioning. That's brilliant. Right below the flag usually. And people are willing to defend it. I mean, come on, we've seen the visceral response so many times where it's like, how do you know? In fact, let me use one more thing. I know our time is getting shorter. I'm going to use a George Orwell quote, which, George Orwell, who wrote 1984, he was not a flat earther, but he was interesting at looking at what people believed. In 1946, I believe, he goes, it's interesting how people believe what scientists tell them. He goes, you could go to anyone on the street and they go, how do you know the world is a globe? Right? And they just come back. It's like, well, we know it's a globe. What are you talking about? It's obvious. It's like, and if you push them, you say, really? How do you know it's a globe? You don't have a spaceship. You don't have a rocket. It's 1946. How did everybody in the world know it was a globe in 1946? And that's when the gears start grinding. It's not that they know, they were told. And there's a big difference there. We defer to authority. There's wonderful psychological stories on that, which is we think that person in that lab coat is smarter than us. Therefore, whatever he says has more credibility than our own thoughts, which is why I tell people, check it out for yourself. Anyway, sorry, I ramble. Go.
Well, and then another question is that just came up is, so I have in the past looked through a fairly high telescope and was able to look at Saturn and see the rings of Saturn. So what would I have been looking at
Oh, good one. Okay,
in that,
so if
in
that,
other
thank you.
planets? I mean, I could see
Oh yeah,
other planets, moon
oh
up
yeah.
close. I mean, the
I've
moon
had
could be
people.
a ship,
Yep.
but
You're absolutely right. The people have come back and said, "Oh, I've seen the moons of Jupiter through my telescope." I go, "Great, fantastic. Go to a planetarium. Hopefully, it's a modern one, and look up at the sky, right? And it's like, can you see Jupiter in a planetarium? Yes. In fact, here, take a pair of binoculars with you at planetarium. Does Jupiter look bigger through those binoculars? Yes. Can you land on that? No. Why? Because it's just lights on a ceiling. When you walk outside of that planetarium, you're just in a much bigger and more complex planetarium that was built with people that with engineering skills far greater than us. I mean, think of the technology we have now, right? Imagine taking an HD television to somebody, I don't know, not even 60 years ago and showing it to them. They freak out, absolutely freak out. Or take a cell phone back even 200 years. You'd be burned. You'd be hung for witchcraft. So the tech, the tech that we haven't invented yet. So yes, everything that you see in the sky, everything is just lights on a ceiling. It is just stagecraft. That is all it is. Very good stagecraft, by the way.
well, and who is putting it up there, and how are they keeping it maintained? There must be some kind of agency or organization, you know, you can't even.
Someone that is one of the common questions, which is, okay, who built this place, right? Let's get to it. Whoever built this place, you can only go one of two ways, right? It's either an older civilization, more powerful and ancient compared to us, or some sort of divine power. But at that point, you're kind of splitting hairs, aren't you? One side, you've got basically the theme from the movie Contact, right? And the other side is, do I want to stop entering? I'm not going to read that. Which is Contact, and the other side is some sort of deity that who may or may not look like Santa Claus in a bathrobe on a Sunday. So at that point, you're splitting hairs. If a giant golden spaceship lands, for example, in the middle of New York right now, right? Two groups of people will form. You'll either have the nerds that'll come out and say, "See, they do look like the blue people from Avatar," right? The nerds, and then you'll have another group that'll be, "We must worship the blue people." Right, and then churches will be built up almost immediately. It's the premise, honestly, behind the everything in Star Trek, the Prime Directive. So, but the point is, we did not build it. Who built it? You can take your pick, one or the other. I could go with either, to be honest, because one man's advanced tech is another man's deity.
Sharon, can I jump in a second? And
Sure.
we also have two more people, so I want to, unless you have a burning question, or you can come back and
Well,
say
one
something.
one other
Yeah.
question was, what if space is not a vacuum?
Well, then you're still clinging onto space by your fingertips, meaning why does there have to be space? We'll go back to the illusion. If 99% of the people, I'm not calling God lazy or whoever it is lazy. If 99.99% of the population believe the illusion, believe the planetarium, then why would you build anything else? Those trace amounts, you can deal with them. The rest of the population looks up and sees whatever they want to see. That's all you need. Space doesn't have to be real. Even Carl Sagan back in the day. And he was one of those guys that he questioned it himself, even though he was a physicist, right? He was the guy that said, space is kind of weird because it's so ridiculously empty. It seems like a waste. And it's like, yeah, it would be a waste. I'm saying that God or whoever built this place is way, way more efficient. Turn it into a studio apartment, a giant domed like snow globe. And if everyone believes it, that's fine. Space, you don't need it. Anyone that says space isn't a vacuum, by the way, is you're just clinging on to space because you like the idea of space, which I love. Space is a wonderful inspirational tool, but that's all it is.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
One very last one that's a yes
See,
or
I
no
told you there
answer.
never ending questions. Go ahead.
Are you or have you ever been an agent of a U.S. intelligence agency?
I have not, but I've been accused of it many times.
Okay.
I don't know why. I do not know why for the life of me. I've been doing this 9 years and I've never wavered from what I'm doing. It's like, look, I try to get people into this. It's like, look, you're living in a building, you're living in a soundstage. And but the only time most of the rumors that ever started about me started from one guy who didn't want to share the stage. His name was Eric Dubé out of Thailand. And I still have the emails from he and his crew. It's like, if you do not join Eric's group, then we will discredit you. It's a story as old as time. I don't mind. It's like, look, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But if I've been doing this 9 years and haven't come out and steered people in a different direction, what's my master plan? If that's the case. But thank you, by the way, for asking that.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sharon. I wanted to, again, you're throwing out some good stuff, but it ties in. Let's look at the scriptures, or who built this place.
Yep.
I'm just going to go back. I think the real secrets that need to be revealed have to do with other ET civilizations that built this place, and technologies, and that, this is not a prison planet, but there are other agenda here. I mean, I've just seen lots of evidence in my last 30 years of my work. Yep. And even goes back, there's a book called Gods of Eden, which talks about the ET roots of all our religions. Yep. Now, partly, if you go to Genesis, the Old Testament, and you look it up, and there's some great talks by Lawrence Gardner, who wrote, I think, Bloodlines of the Holy Grail, that there are different names for God in the Bible, because like Jehovah, Yahweh, the Lord, and it's actually referring to different people. You probably heard of Enlil and Enki, the Anunnaki, that sort of thing. Yeah. So looking at scripture, my question is, I guess people say that, oh, well, it kind of points to flat earth. Why? Maybe they wrote that. I mean, this is written by men who got directions from other beings that want to present a certain image of the earth, whatever it might be. I don't know. Sure. So, okay. So anyway, let me get out of that. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in and go to Peggy.
Peggy. Can we have a response to that first? Mark, what about the ancient astronaut angle? How does that kind of combine with flat earth? I know Dave Weiss, a year ago, he answered it that perhaps they're from the outer space, the extra terra, the land beyond Antarctic.
Yeah. I've said this since the beginning, which is, and by the way, sorry, back up one more even before that, which is the Book of Enoch, which I love, and I understand why it wasn't canonized in the Bible, which is, it reads like basically backstage instructions for this place. You read that, and in context with flat Earth, in fact, Zen Garcia, that he had a revelation after he was listening to flat Earth. He's like, oh my God. He goes, now I understand the Book of Enoch so much more, which I totally get that. As far as ancient astronauts go, it's something I've said all the way back in 2015, which was, this wouldn't be a one-off, meaning we aren't the first people to rent this apartment, not by any stretch. I mean, come on, you don't have to watch every season of Ancient Aliens to figure that out. The sunken cities off of Japan, the sunken cities off of India, Pumapunku, Machu Picchu, Bimini Road, the Bosnian pyramids, the real pyramids. I mean, you go to the real pyramids and stand in front of it and then look back at Cairo. It's like, oh yeah, these guys had nothing to do with the building of this place. Do I think the ancient astronauts theory is true? Yes, but I also think that there are previous civilizations before us. Our history only goes back unbroken about 5,000 years, right, give or take. Before that, I think other civilizations, much like classes in a classroom, go through this world, and this place wasn't a one-off just for us. Why would it be? A civilization comes, does its time, you terraform a little bit, leave some remnants here and there. Be curious to see what survives. Watch the only thing that survives from our civilization thousands of years from now be like Mount Rushmore. That'll freak people out. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. Peggy.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks a bunch for the presentation. It was great. I'm not really up on all my flat earth research, although I certainly have dabbled, but I was wondering if you are familiar with a book called 100 Proofs that the Earth is not a globe, I think written in the late 1800s.
I think I'm aware of it. I get sent a lot of information. I got a whole dresser full of books over there. Which I can't get to all of them. No, people send me those books all the time. I don't know. It sounds familiar, but it probably gets middled in with all the rest of them. But
Yeah.
Interesting that you would bring that one up. Why? Was there something in it that really caught your eye?
No, more that just like it's like if the Earth isn't a spinning globe, that's just the beginning of a lot of other house of cards falling, like so many other lies that they tell us that
Yes.
it just gets really big.
And
And so this stuff about Antarctica, I ran across that years ago. You know,
yeah.
it just has far-reaching implications, is what I'm trying to say, over and above whether we're on, you know, like a disc instead of a spinning globe.
And to your point, it's one of the reasons why it's like, oh, why haven't they told the population? It's like, are you kidding? Do you know? Do you know
Why
what we're
haven't they told us a lot of things?
yeah, the big reason is unfortunately bad timing. If you don't figure out what this world is until about 1960, you can't tell the population. The we've already been built. The infrastructure's already been set up. People in power don't roll the dice when it comes to that stuff. I mean, think about all the questions that would come up. Just to name a few, it's like, oh, okay, so you were wrong about something this really huge. Let's revisit some of the stuff like carbon dating, evolution, the Big Bang Theory, dark matter, and it would never end. Science would never recover from the body punches that they would receive after that. Not to mention the the five religions that would go out, the major five religious houses, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. They would all just launch themselves at science. It would turn into a whole different era. So science is doing whatever it can. And if you think I'm kidding, watch any television show or movie that's been made since 1960, and you'll see it eventually. Notice how many globes there are in frame, even though they shouldn't be in frame. I don't care about classrooms. Why is there a globe in that detective's office in Chicago? Why is there a globe in that doctor's office and blah, blah, blah? And we just gloss over it. I'm hyper aware to it now. Anyway, sorry, go.
Okay,
Could I
thanks, Peggy.
insert a real quick follow-up that you mentioned Peggy, that book from a century ago, and Mark, earlier you mentioned about we may not be the first tenants of this terrarium.
Right.
100 years ago, a lot of flat earthers are into the old world theory and great resets, and Stu Peters just issued a fantastic new documentary about the old world. Do you have any comments on that? That's the next rabbit hole next to flat earth, right?
I have not seen it yet. I'm fully aware of Stu Peters. He's a friend of Flat Earth, definitely, and I like his stuff. But I'll have to check it out. As far as the old world goes, and I think what we're talking about is some of the civil can basically we don't have time for this, but a civilization within a civilization where you do partial resets inside a civilization. It's akin to a movie called Dark City, which was made in the late 90s, which is, can you do a reset and just change the memories of the current population and build cities on top of other cities or civilization right on top of the old one? And the other people just don't know what's going on, and they just keep going like they're normally going. It's an interesting concept. I don't doubt it. Look, I come from the computer game world. It's what we do in our terraforming all the time. So I like it.
Yeah, thanks. And I live right next to Shell Beach, Mark.
Nice. Nice. That's good. You know
Dark
how to
Ci-
get there? You know how to get there?
Dark City's a great movie, people.
Dark
If you
City's a
haven't
great
seen
movie.
it, it's
Underrated
really cool.
movie.
Really cool. Bill, I think you're next, and then Michael, or do I have it wrong? Yeah, because I pulled your hand down by accident.
Bill.
Bill.
So
Or Bill's
if
son.
so if the world was a circle, and like if you had a rocket ship and you try to go to space,
Yes.
the radiation would kill you, and
Yes.
you couldn't really turn your spaceship around if you were in space.
Good point. You want me to comment on that? Or do you have a follow-up to that?
Sure, you can comment.
Okay, so
Good
yes, you're
soccer
absolutely
shirt,
right.
by the way. My son would love that.
It's a good point. Isn't this a school day, young man? How old are you?
9,
Nice. Cool.
and I'm going grade.
Well, all right then. All right, you have a wonderful point, which lots of people gloss over. Again, I understand it because in America, like football is big, band is big, science and physics clubs really, really small. We should focus on general physics, just to remind people, which is, to your point, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, meaning things have to push off of something else. When you're walking, your feet are pushing off the ground. When you're swimming, your hands and your legs are pushing off the water. Even airplanes, they're not even really flying, they're swimming. The airplane blades, even jets, are pushing against the medium, which is the nitrogen and the oxygen in the atmosphere. But when you're in a vacuum, what are you pushing against? Nothing. You're not pushing against anything. So how exactly does a rocket work in a vacuum? And to your point, how does it slow down or turn? Oh yeah, you could probably launch, well, hypothetically, you could launch something into a vacuum, but once it's in the vacuum, oh, it's on its own. It's not going anywhere because you can't push anything. You can't turn, you can't slow down. You are basically just a bullet flying off into nothing. So
So they claim the world is a circle,
Yep.
but the astronauts always are alive after the case. Like they say they go to the moon and they're always alive. They
Yep.
wouldn't, because they couldn't get back to the Earth.
No, they couldn't. Which, by the way, that's a wonderful point. Not only could they not get back from the moon, the Mars program, which I love that they keep talking about the Mars program. It's like, oh, Elon Musk says, oh yeah, we're going to have people on Mars by 2030. It's like, no, even if you could, even if Mars was a place you could go to, it's a one-way trip. We don't even have the fuel. Once you landed there, you don't have nearly the fuel to get back. Even if that was the case, we don't even have the fuel to get there. But yes, absolutely, positively true. You're right. You're spot on. Good for you.
Just to jump in, we do have a base on Mars, but we don't use conventional technology to get there.
And if the world was flat,
Yes.
they claim that we rotate around the sun.
Yeah.
Then, well, if we rotate around the sun, then when the sun is under us, would the moon be above us?
Gotcha. It's one of the common misconceptions, which is why, and again, I understand why people draw it. Most of the people, they draw the flat world as an asteroid, a big flat asteroid flying in space. Again, there doesn't have to be space. It's probably just a big flat domed structure sitting on a desk somewhere, if that was the case. And so as far as the sun goes, the sun and the moon are tiny little objects less than 50 miles wide, just circling above us like a mobile above a child's crib. So that's and their light sources are way different, way smaller. And by the way, the sun, I feel bad because every time you draw the sun in a flat Earth model, they have to draw it about 1,000, 2,000 miles wide, because if it was drawn of like 50 miles wide, you wouldn't even see it. It'd just be tiny, and that would apply to the light physics way better than an object that was 1,000 miles wide. Anyway, go ahead.
Thanks.
If there was, like, so if you threw a spaceship up there,
Yeah.
I mean, if if it was rotating, how could it
Yes.
rotate? If there was gravity, because it's just like electrical force, it couldn't move.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, we got a few
I like
people left. We're kind of out of time almost. So if everybody could keep their questions short, we'll get through this.
I'll answer as brief as I can.
And thanks, answers
Yeah.
too. Michael.
For those who want to pursue this further, what are some of the sources, books, websites, individuals that you would recommend?
Okay.
And then related to that is the idea that there are people out there that seem to be controlled opposition, gatekeepers. Can you identify people that you believe are to be avoided?
Okay. As far as the resources, we'll do the positives first. The resources, if you're looking for biblical, I would do the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon. I'm sorry, non-biblical. I would do the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. That's wonderful. There's all sorts of resources out there in that one. If you're looking biblical, testingtheglobe.com by the late Rob Skiba. I love his stuff. The guys are doing the best debates right now. Austin Whitsitt is doing wonderful debates. David Weiss is doing some great presentations on the British side. Nathan Oakley is doing some wonderful stuff. Dave Murphy. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, obviously check out my stuff. If you want to look up my stuff, just type in Flat Earth Mark and go down the rabbit hole somewhere. I'm not going to point you to any of the websites because there's so much censorship out there, but you will eventually run into my stuff. But there's so much content out there. As far as controlled opposition, and I've said this for years, I don't know if there is actually any official controlled opposition. I mean, there's some personalities that don't get along well with other people. I mean, the documentary Behind the Curve, which, with Eric Debay, he doesn't share well with others. Matt Boylan doesn't share well with others. There's others out there, but controlled opposition, I've never seen one, because controlled opposition would be easy to spot. And by that, I mean a flat earther that just rocketed up the charts with subs. Most of our people, and I said this in my last speech in Vegas last year at the conference, most of our people don't even, I think our highest person is like 300,000 subs, and that's ODD, reality, and then everybody else is in the low six, even lower six figures, there should be people way higher. But if you want to see a controlled opposition, watch somebody that nobody knew anything about. And by the way, that keeps us honest, because even though you can buy likes and hits and subs, again, check out the documentary Fake Famous if you think I'm kidding there. If that, because nobody buys it, nobody in our community buys that stuff, nobody sticks out. So if there is controlled opposition, I'd love to run into them. I'm tight with many of these guys, and I've never even heard a whisper. I mean, yeah, there's some little grumblings, but most of the time it's just conflicts between egos.
Somebody just posted in the chat, the Flat Earth Society. That's someone
Yeah,
I was thinking of.
Okay. The Flat Earth Society, which I talked about in the original Flat Earth Clues, and I was one of the first people to bring it up. When I didn't know anything about anything, I actually joined that group based out of Hong Kong, and I think the first member was the musician. He wasn't the founder, but he was like the first high-profile member, Thomas Dolby, the musician from back in the day. And it was interesting because, yeah, there was only 500 people that were in that group, and now we've got millions and millions and millions. But the velvet rope in front of that forum was being guarded by trolls. So at the very least, it was run by trolls. Do I think it was like full on government controlled opposition? If it was a really, really weak program, because they never got on board with us. We have nothing to do with the original Flat Earth Society. We were like, Flat Earth social media 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. By the time there was like 2 years before they even got a hold of me, and I remember they called me. They said, "Oh, hey, like what you're doing." It's like, where have you guys been? We've been just running ripshot over the internet without any. They were promoting us for the first 3 years. So anyway, there you go. Yeah, Flat Earth Society. Yeah, don't hang out with them, but most people don't. Most people just do various social media things. But thank you for asking that.
Just a quick insertion here. I know Jim has to leave. In chat, I put the link for our promo for today, and in that you'll find links both to the app that Mark mentioned, as well as the recent InfoWars debate with Austin Whitsitt. So, Dr. John, you're up.
Thank you, sir. I got a couple of questions. I got this. How should I say? I've got this program I use called Logos when I'm doing my sermons, and it used to be that when I used to type in flat Earth, it would come up with a model of how the Hebrew scholars used to look at the Earth, and it was flat. Well, guess what? I just did it today because I wanted to show everybody, and I can't find it. I can't find it.
Well,
So
look.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're right. They're censoring that particular search. Shadow banning and censoring is pretty rampant inside this. But the what I usually tell people to type in, and of course, instinctively you wouldn't type this, is go to any search engine and type in ancient cosmologies. And
Ancient cosmology. Okay.
ancient cosmologies, which is every single culture, even the Greeks. If anyone comes back to, oh, the Greeks were totally into the globe, it's like, screw you. The Greeks were not. And even if they couldn't prove it back then anyway. But ancient cosmologies, you'll see every single culture drew the same thing, which was some sort of domed structure, which was interesting. It's like, why would everybody draw the same thing? And then NASA comes along. It's like, oh, no, it's a sphere. Like, okay.
Well, it's like every ancient culture has some flood theory, flood event that happened, right? And the other question I have for you, Mark, is the fact, because I'm curious about this. I mean, I grew up in astronomy. I took classes in astronomy. I was going to become an astronomer. But my question to you, if the Earth is truly flat, as we're talking about, or somewhat flat, if I could, I wish I had that diagram of what the Hebrew scholars back then looked at the Earth as. There was pillars underneath it, and then of course there was the water, the continents, and then the dome over it. Why then do we have the different time zones? If somebody just put on here that supposedly the sun and the moon, or you said is above us all the time, so why do we have the different time zones then?
Got it. And let me address your other thing first, which is type in, if anyone's looking, if you're looking for that, type in ancient cosmologies Hebrew, and you might, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, Michael Heisler used to talk about it.
Yeah. Where it was a pretty cool drawing, but it was the Hebrew version of the snow globey thing but they showed even the stuff that was underneath, the subterranean things, which looked like a cave with stalagmites and stalactites. But as far as the time,
that's the way it's described in the Bible. That's the way it's described in the Bible.
The time zones, when it comes to time zones, that one's pretty easy, which is, again, unfortunately, we don't have the diagrams to really show it that well, which is the sun. If the sun is really, really, really tiny, 50 miles wide or smaller, and the light source, the reason why you get away with it is because, yes, the light source would normally be seen from a long, long way away, but you're not in a vacuum. If you're in what we're in right now, it's usually the thickness of the atmosphere, which is why we can only see so far. Our limit, even at mountaintops, is only a couple hundred miles, because you are looking through a soup. You're looking through a thin version of water, 80% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, which means, and we'll use the water version. Like deep divers will tell you, even on a hot summer day, when you get down around 150 feet, the sun's gone. It's gone completely, because why? The sun cannot penetrate through the water. The air,
Right.
just less so, which is the sun. Again, David Weiss did some wonderful videos on this, and other people have too, which is there's some wonderful footage. When the sun goes off into the distance, it's not setting, it's just fading away into the thickness of the atmosphere. Meaning you see it, if you zoom in, if you got the right filter on your camera, it'll sit there and then it'll just fade right away, because the sun cannot penetrate through that much distance of nitrogen and oxygen. That's why you have time zones. It is only because it is a combination of the sun being very, very small, very, very close, and the thickness of the atmosphere. That's it. Which is why in games, by the way, because there is no atmosphere in games, we have to create fake atmosphere. Otherwise, you could see the light source from forever away.
Got
There you
it.
go.
So, and one other comment, I guess, or question. This flat Earth thing seems a lot like what's going on with the giants, where they don't want to admit that they're giants because it would throw off the theory of evolution off.
Right. Oh, well, yeah. The giants kind of goes along with the ancient astronauts thing, which is, if there are ancient civilizations, you really don't, once everything in our society has been structured and set up, you don't want to tell people about giants or any ancient civilization. I mean, it doesn't have to be giants. It could be little people. It could be little grays. It could be little, any type of beings with 4 arms, being with 6 arms, being with 2 heads. You don't want to tell people about that. You want to hide any of the old ancient civilizations to a point, because it raises too many questions. Which is why, again, the ancient aliens, when they go out to, I love the fact that people, come on, we can't even get people to question the ancient structures, the remnants of the structures, like Puma Punku and Machu Picchu and Bimini Road and all that stuff. It's interesting, but it's vague enough to where they let that slide. But as far as any skeletons, or if you found a cave with a whole bunch of remnants, including human or humanoid remnants, oh yeah, you'd bury that. It just there's too many questions for the general public. The first rule of power, again, is stay hidden, but only slightly less down the chain is, if you want to be the authority, you make sure you're the authority and nothing questions it. Meaning, if you even admitted, this is one of the risks they're thinking about now, that they didn't build this world, if somebody else built this world, immediately the government or whoever it is loses credibility, because people, it's like, oh, okay, so there's a power bigger than you. Yeah, we really like to talk to that power. It's the Air Force rule, by the way, which is why, the UFOs have, using unified technology, can run circles around our fighters all day long, right? Well, you can't
Right.
rule the sky. You can't rule the skies unless you rule the skies. The Air Force is not, has a really tough time coming out and saying, oh yeah, there's things up there that can just beat the brakes off of us anytime they want. Anyway, sorry, I ramble.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yep.
David.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Can you hear me?
Hi, David.
Hey, so yeah, I just wanted to jump in here. Not so much, I guess, maybe kind of a question, but more, some helpful information to add. With my professional background, I'm by no means any type of scientist or anything like that. But I do have a really, deep background in computer science, and just wanted to add, I think one of the things that really got me on board the flat Earth train, I've been on this, for over a decade now, was actually a computer programmer. It's funny, my mom's actually on the call with us. She asked me to join in, and when I was a kid, in high school, she sent me off to MIT to do a lot of learning. I networked with a lot of computer programmers, and that's really what sent me down, this whole rabbit hole, I guess, so to speak, because I had some friends that became programmers at the USGS, if you guys know what that is, the United States Geological Survey.
Sure.
And they're basically, if you guys use Apple Maps, if you guys use Google Maps, that map is powered by the information that's produced, by the USGS. And that's really what sent me down this whole rabbit hole. Is one of my friends who's a programmer, he went to MIT. He basically shared information with me that you can't find even on the internet, and I have a lot of it, wealth of this information, on my computer and stuff, that basically says, when they were, constructing, the Google Maps model, that was based off the USGS system, that they essentially they removed the entire UTM southern hemisphere projection from their model. They just removed it because they were having computer errors, where basically the longitudes were only going up, which is naturally, what should happen, because, that's, the map that we actually live on, is, where longitudes go up. So I don't know if you had, any knowledge of that or experience with that, but,
I do. One of my early, thank you for that. One of my early subject matter experts, and I got a wonderful list of my subject matter expert thing on my channel on YouTube, but it's out there everywhere, which was geologic surveyors, which was, and we'll address the longitude thing in 1 second, which is geologic surveyors. There was a 90%, there's two types of surveyors. There's planar surveyors and there's geodetic surveyors. Geodetic, is that right? I think, whatever. But the 90 something percent of the surveys out there are planar surveyors, plain, flat level. They measure everything absolutely flat. It doesn't matter if it's a parking lot or a car factory or an airport. They measure it absolutely, tabletop flat. They treat it like it's flat. In fact, they get questions all the time from the rookies, the new people that come in. It's like, yeah, don't we have to deal with the curvature of the earth? And they get waved off by the veterans. Like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's in the book. You're never going to use it. Who cares? And that happens with all sorts of different groups, military, all the time. Every firing solution, I don't care if CNN comes out with a sniper that says, oh, I account for the curvature, the spin of the earth. It's like, really? Because I shoot, right? There's windage and elevation on scopes. That's all there is, right? Howitzers, missiles, submarines, with torpedoes, all firing systems. They all say, we do not build the curvature of the earth or the firing solution into any thing ever when we shoot, ever. But as far as the longitude goes, and we don't have time to talk about it here, but I want to mention that if anyone wants to look this up, look up the time zone differences, because that gets tied to your longitude thing, between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Because in a world like this, if you had to take a flat map and then turn it into a globe, as you know, it doesn't wrap around a globe really, really well. You have to cut out time zones in certain areas, and you have to expand them in other areas, especially in the southern hemisphere. You're right. The programming would not work well at all in the southern hemisphere because the lines aren't going to match up. Luckily for them, and I don't think it's an accident, there's so much ocean out there compared to the northern hemisphere that they just nip and tuck all sorts of different places because nobody lives there, and so they don't care. Like the little thing, like real quick. Sorry, there's so many ways I could go with this. Australia and America are about the same size, right? But Australia really only has, I think it's two and a half time zones, and we have, we have 4, and they stretch it to 5 during some months, and nobody never really notices, which just drives me freaking insane. And in the northern hemisphere, because again it tucks in, they have to look at the time zone difference when you get up near Alaska, between Alaska and Russia. There's a section where there's like 3 time zones just gone, absolutely gone. But the average person doesn't understand. Sorry, one more thing, real quick, because I know there's a couple of other people asking stuff, which is the programming aspect. I don't get a chance to bring it up that much, but I want to bring it up anyway, because yes, I come from a programming background. I used to produce video games for a living. I played games for a living back in the day. I lived and breathed that stuff. Probably one of the reasons I didn't get married. And when it comes to, there's 2 things that really scream that this place has some sort of electromagnetic, digital, virtual signal. One of that would be the double slit experiment. If you guys want to look into the double slit experiment, it absolutely screams that this place is a simulation, which is the same stuff that we are using in the gaming world or the virtual world is happening here. And that is akin to a wonderful movie called The 13th Floor, which was made in the late 90s, which was based off a book from the 60s called Simulacron 3. I don't think that was an accident that simulation was built in the Simulacron 3. The other experiment, if you want to look into something even more weird than that, look up there's a wiki thing on it called Neuroscience and Free Will, which is a wonderful thing where they hooked up electrodes to taped them to the top of people's heads, and they saw that, and they said pick a number on the computer between 1 and 9 or whatever it was. And they said the computer can tell you not what number, but when you were going to pick the number 8 seconds before you picked it. And in some cases, that's before the question was even asked. It's like, well, how's that even possible? Unless we're talking about predestination, which means it might not be, I know we're going off into the weeds, but I got to mention this, take 10 seconds, that you're not only, you might not just be living in a virtual simulation, it might not even be real time. It could be a pre-record. Because why wouldn't it be, right? There's all sorts of kids online that watch movies of people playing video games. And all you're looking at is an MP4, but they get the same experience like if they're watching or if they were playing something in real time. Anyway, sorry. Does that help? Good. Okay. What else you got?
Finally, Bill's son, last question.
Okay.
So if people did go in space,
Yeah.
got in space, when they
Mhm.
circle the world,
Yes.
they say there's a core. But if the world was flat, there'd be no core, correct?
Good point. And that's a wonderful last question. The core of the Earth is, in fact, it was built into my original clues, which was it is assumed. And again, the general population believes that there's a core of the Earth, but the deepest hole ever drilled is less than 8 miles or 12 kilometers, depending on metric, which means if it's a globe, then supposedly 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth, right? But the deepest hole we've ever drilled is only 8 miles, which is weird. It's like, okay, how do you know what the core of the Earth looks like, right? Core of the Earth with these perfect 1,000-mile thick bands, goes from red to orange to yellow to white, the white hot center. And by the way, there's a whole nother thing. It's like, how is there a white hot center when magnets fail when they get heated to molten temperatures? They absolutely fail. So why is there electromagnetic core if it's molten, which is a whole nother thing. But if the Earth is only drilled down 8 miles, then why are you showing us in all these textbooks what it looks like? In fact, you can go on Wiki right now. They're not shy about it. They say, yeah, by the way, we don't really know what the core of the Earth looks like. We're just kind of extrapolating from volcanoes. And people, in fact, in the old textbooks, if you look, the old textbooks, they'll even say in small print on the bottom of that cross section of the Earth, they'll say, yeah, just so you know, we don't really know what's going on down there. And then eventually they just remove that text because science doesn't like question marks, because they don't like the general public questioning things. The Earth, the cross section, you should just be a globe with a big question mark in the center if science was being honest, and they're not. They may, again, science is right, and basically our guess is right until we're wrong, and then it's just a new guess. That's what science is. Science has become its own religion. It's become scientism, and that is how they hold sway. And they've been doing really well in this technological age because they have more relevance than they used to, centuries and centuries ago. So anyway, thank you for that question. Anything else I can do for you guys?
Thank you, Mark, for staying over time. This is
Oh, no,
such
that's
an
fine.
exciting
That's
topic.
fine. Yeah.
It's amazing how much it triggers people, which is hilarious. So people like to show the video from the International Space Station as evidence
Yeah.
of the space. Quick response to that?
Yeah, the ISS, if the Apollo, okay, I will try to keep this short. If the Apollo program is a complete disaster and has not aged well. Yeah, remember, we haven't even claimed to have gone back since 1972. We've been kicking the can down the road since 1972. No one's even attempted to go back to the moon since 1972, right? Even tried to fake it because you can't, because you'd be terrified. I've said this many times. I go, if you offered me $1 trillion and said, hey, we'd like you to direct a fake moon mission, I go, no, not going to do it. You can't do it. It's impossible to do nowadays because it's the weakest link. So if the Apollo program is a joke, then why would the ISS be real? And I have literally had globe people come back. It's like, okay, fine, Apollo didn't age well, but you can't tell me the ISS is fake. It's like, why? It's one of the first rules of crime. If that's fake, you're going to fake everything, because when you get caught, you're going to get caught for everything, every way. The punishment's the same. The ISS does not make any sense. I have had many subject matter experts, and one of the easiest things for me for the ISS is the vacuum versus the vacuum of space versus the internal pressure. The ISS is made out of plastic and aluminum and so a little bit of a titanium frame. The pressure on the inside of that thing would be way too great. It would just detonate. It would absolutely freaking detonate. And by the way, they treat it like it's a bar. All the doors are open constantly. It should be like a submarine, right? In fact, sorry, let me end on this one, which is Someone told me once, an engineer that worked for a company that made seals for doors for submarines, right? He's going, you have no idea. He goes, those have to be absolutely precise. And remember, they close the doors and spin the wheel on the sub wherever they go, right? Because if something collapses, they don't want to lose the whole sub. In fact, the submarine is so incredibly heavy and dense, with the shell, it'd be one of the only things that actually could go to space. Yes, a submarine could go to space and probably survive, right? If space was real and if it was in a vacuum. Put a sub in a vacuum chamber, it'd probably survive. But that's because it's heavy, heavy steel. How does the ISS survive? No one knows. It just does. They're using movie logic, which is if it just happens, then the audience believes it. The same thing, sorry, last thing, I swear, which is the spacesuit. It's the only thing, everything, you can look this up. It's not our videos. You can look anything in a vacuum chamber on YouTube, anything. I don't care if it's a soda can, a volleyball, a football, they all detonate in a vacuum. The pressure gets too great and they detonate. The only thing that has never expanded and exploded in a vacuum, the spacesuit. I have gone to so many scientists and said, explain to me the technology that keeps a spacesuit from turning into a parade float, exploding, and then the guy dies. Tell me the technology. They won't even address it. They can't, because I can't. Look, I'm a pretty clever problem solver and a clever writer. I can't come up with a fictional reason to do it, short of a force field. And if you had a force field, you wouldn't need a spacesuit. So, and even if you could convince me now that the spacesuit could, what?
If they tried to send a rocket to space, they'd miss the moon every single time.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't be able to hit the moon and land it.
Absolutely right.
That's
Absolutely
trying to land a triple backflip on a bike over a yacht. That's how hard it'd be.
Yes, absolutely.
Mark,
absolutely
as a
true.
follow-up in chat, people say they see the station, the space station.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Is there something up there that they're faking it, or what's going on with that?
Why wouldn't you? If you look, we have the budget, we have the technology to put something up there. Is there something flying around? Yes, I am never going to deny that. There's all sorts of stuff flying around. If you want to see some really cool stuff, get some night vision binoculars and 5 power or higher and start looking at the sky. The sky is crawling with stuff that has nothing to do with us. But is there something that looks like an ISS type object that's flying around? You bet. Is anyone living on it? Not a chance in hell. No way, no how. Everything that they do on the inside of that thing makes no sense from a physics standpoint. And yeah, you look up, I could literally spend an entire day on that. Just look up the simple stuff, like not even just the computer glitches, from the layering glitches that they've done for years. Look up the simple stuff like the hairspray issue, which is it didn't just bug me that the women permed their hair straight up like the Bride of Frankenstein because they wanted to simulate anti-gravity. It's like, oh, look, my hair's standing straight up. It's like, really? Because you could bounce a quarter off of it, and that's not what it would do. It'd be like in a swimming pool. It'd be all flowy and stuff, but that's not what they do. The bigger point is, why would they have hair at all on the space station? Remember, it's a zero gravity air filtration system. That hair would be clogging everywhere. You'd be right. It's the same reason why we put shower or hair nets on people that go to public pools. They would have their eyebrows shaved. They would have their head shaved. There would be no body hair for these people. And yet, women with huge hair. Again, the people, the general public, they don't know science. They don't know physics. And so they just defer to the people in the lab coats. Bugs me.
Couple quick follow-ups, if you don't mind, Mark.
No, it's
a lot
fine.
of chat.
I can imagine.
So there was a chat that the giants are moving the sun and moon in their circles above the earth. Don't Austin Whitsitt and others describe the toroidal field of this flat plane as sort of a cathode, anode, salt bridge kind of electromagnetic creation? Is that correct? Is that the latest, greatest of how it works?
Yeah, I mean, it's good for me. Again, if you want to describe it as a electromagnetic physical type model, great, wonderful. I'm not going to shoot it down. Why would I? Wake up with flat Earth. Everything after that is kind of it turns into speculation. However, for me, because again, just because of my background, because I've come from the software virtual world, I even take it a step above that. Oh yeah, there could be a toroidal wow, now you're having me screwed up. Toroidal field that could be encompassing it and could be electromagnetic, but what's creating it outside of that for me would be ones and zeros. For me, God is a programmer, the greatest programmer ever. So
Mark,
yes.
Have you
How are you?
ever?
How are you still around? What is what?
We gotta end this. The last thing
I
is
know, he's
everyone
never gonna
says the way
stop.
to prove the globe is to have two planes in Antarctica leaving Murdo, flying
Yes.
around Antarctica to arrive at the same spot.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that would be a proof of the globe?
That, oh,
Why
that
would
was
they
a,
do that?
yep, that was a proof that I came up with years ago. In fact, there was an even easier. I mean, plane is one way of doing it. You also just use one boat and one plane, and just have a boat. Have the plane do a circle and come back to the boat. Right. The problem is that once we started firing this, our stuff up, they expanded the treaty to include the 60th latitude. So now you can't even do that test within visual range, not even close of the Antarctic coastline. And then they expanded it even further to say that you can't use drones in Antarctica. Any flying drones. It's like, wow, why would you ban drones in Antarctica? Well, think about this. One more real quick, which was the first blue marble shot that was ever taken of the Earth, right? And you can look this up, was in 1972 by Apollo 17 on the way home, right? All the other Apollo missions never took a full disc shot of the Earth except for Apollo 17. You know when the second shot was taken? It was taken in 2015, 1972 to 2015. 40-something years later, that's forever in space terms. And why did they all of a sudden release a second blue marble shot in 2015? That's when we started doing our thing. And it's like, oh yeah, look, here's the second blue marble shot. Hell, Obama was the one that did the release for it. You can look it up. It's like 43 years. You never had a second blue marble shot because they were scared to do it. Because the internet microscopes everything. We look at everything now. We never take anything for granted. Back in the 80s, you look up some of the space shuttle missions, the video from the space shuttle missions in the 1980s. They're ridiculous. It's because nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. Now, so many people on the internet, so many people like us. The truth seekers, love them.
So what's next for Mark Sargent and this movement? Any big efforts, ventures, conferences, plans, ideas?
Oh boy. 9 years, and I've done what, 3 books. The Netflix documentary, by the way, love it or hate it, it's still out there. Look up Behind the Curve when you get a chance. For me, just doing more interviews, more conferences wherever I go. The pandemic slowed things down quite a bit. I mean, in 2019, before the mandates kicked in, we did conferences in what, 7 or 8 countries. I mean, I did conferences in places I never thought I'd go to. But now that the mandates are over, that's a whole nother show. Just waiting I say yes to every opportunity that comes my way. So whatever, if anyone wants me to do their podcast, please call me up, shoot me an email. I'll answer the phone. And by the way, I'm very easy to find. I do the dumb thing, but it's part of why I got to do what I did. I put all my contact information in the description body of every video I make. So it's easy. You can literally Google, what's Mark Sargent's phone number or physical address? It'll be there.
Great. Thanks so much, Mark. This is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, by the way. And do not, again, one more quick reminder for people, everything I've been telling you now, again, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not here to convince you or persuade you. I'm just here to put the idea in your head. You are the one that have to don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Figure it out for yourself. The reason why our community has a 99% retention rate isn't because you were convinced. It's because you tore down the globe yourself. And when you tear it down yourself, how could you possibly go back? You basically red pill yourself in doing this. We didn't do it for you. You can find me, just type in Flat Earth Mark in any search engine, have fun with it, and wherever it takes you. I don't care if it takes you to somebody else's content, go follow that content. Whatever resonates with you, fantastic. Our community is so broad that we call it Flat Earth University. We have a lot of people and a lot of different things. So there you go.
Before you leave.
Oh, for the love of God, kid. What?
All the stuff in space, that's photoshopped, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let me end on this. Yes. Everything, because people will say, there's so many pictures from space. Really? Show me a picture of a satellite taken from another satellite. Show me an astronaut that turns the camera around 360 degrees while it's running, including, by the way, the moon, which should have been the first thing you did. And show me real shots. It was one of the proofs. Let me end with this. You want to convince me that that the world is a globe? Fine. First, the cheap version would be put me in a vacuum chamber, give me a spacesuit, or loan me in one of your spacesuits, and put me in a vacuum chamber. I'll be able to tell you if it's a real vacuum chamber and tell me how I don't die. I'm willing to put my life on the line for that. The other one, though, you want to make it more complicated? Put a camera on a rocket, fire, point it down at the ground, fire it up into space, and the Earth should turn into a globe as it's leaving orbit. It's never been done in the history of space travel. Not even Elon Musk with that whole roadster in space. Should have done it. It was good. Hey, it's way to Mars. It's like, oh no, we just turned off the cameras. It's like, what are you talking about? Why'd you turn off the cameras? You had 3 wonderful HD cameras with perfect video transmission. No, never happened. So anyway, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.